How do you become good at something, good at anything? There are methods, there are strategies, there are hacks, there are ways to not only become better at something faster to shorten the time, but also to reach a higher level, to become the best of the best. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How do you become better at something faster? Whatever it is you want to learn, how do you become better at it faster and become better at a higher level? Hi, I'm Croy Sather. I ran 3,000 miles across America, a marathon a day for 100 consecutive days. But what you might not know about that is that I also spoke every single day. I gave an inspirational speech to a different audience each day and then ran my marathon. So I became extraordinarily good at public speaking. Wasn't a public speaker before. I was a carpenter, as blue collar as you get. My dad, my uncles, my brothers, all of them were carpenters. So what do you think I became? I became a doctor. No, I became a carpenter. And I was as blue collar as you get. I barely graduated high school. I knew nothing about speaking, nothing about writing, nothing about any of these things. And yet that's what I do today. And so I'm going to teach you not how to become a speaker, but how to become better at something, because there are universal methods and strategies and ways to go about shortening that learning curve and to reach the highest level. In fact, I reached such a high level in professional speaking in front of an audience, for example, in front of a corporation. They hire me to come in and speak with their group, that I get paid $20,000 for a 1-hour speech. Now, they don't pay just anybody for that. They only pay the best of the best for that. And so I had to become extraordinarily good. But how do you become so good at something when you don't even know how to do it? So the first time I gave a speech, I held onto that lectern, not called the podium, but it's called the lectern. You can Google it. But I held onto that thing as if I was going to break it. I'm kind of surprised this wooden thing didn't shatter in my hands, because I was so nervous. I apologized constantly. I said ahs and ums, and I made every error you could possibly do. I knew at that point, if I was going to become a public speaker, that I'd have to become really good at it. How I became a public speaker was that I was a carpenter, like my dad, my uncles, my brothers, did it for a lot of years. It was very good to me, made a lot of money, eventually became a house flipper, buy a house, renovate it, flip it, sell it for more money. And so doing that, I had got a flyer in the mail saying that come to this expo, we talk about how to make money. And one of the things that was on there was how to do it for real estate flipping and different real estate investment type strategies. So okay, this is interesting. I didn't even know at that point that there was such a thing as a conference, as an expo, they called this one, a wealth expo, they called it. And I didn't even know that there was such a thing, but it talked about real estate and how to make more money flipping houses, which is what I was doing, as well as being a carpenter, building houses for other people. So I'm okay, I'm going to go. I drive 3 hours from New York, get up to Boston, watch this event. There's speaker after speaker after speaker. One guy's talking about stock market. One guy's talking about stock trading. One guy's talking about real estate. One guy's talking about legal stuff, how to protect yourself legally in a corporation, all kinds of people. But then this guy comes up and he's a motivational speaker, and he's talking about mindset and discipline and mental strength and consistency and focus and emotional strength and all these different things. And I wasn't but 20, 30 minutes into this talk, and I'm watching this guy. I'm like, this is the most amazing thing ever. And at that moment, I was looking for a career change. I didn't want to be a carpenter for the rest of my life. I didn't even want to flip houses for the rest of my life, even though I was making a bundle of money doing it. It's like, I want to do something else. This is great. I love it, but it's not fulfilling. I wasn't getting enough out of it. And so I was looking for something different to do at that point, but I had no idea what. I see this guy speaking up there, and he's talking about all this mindset stuff and personal mastery and personal power and all these other things. I'm like, that's it. I want to do what this guy's doing. And so that moment, my life was changed. And then some other speakers came up, and a couple of other motivational guys talking about similar kind of things. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. And that changed the trajectory of my life. But I had never spoke before, except for that one time when I told you that I was so bad at it. And so I had to learn how to do it. So how do you go from a non-speaker, guy that barely graduated high school, swinging a hammer for his life, working outside in the freezing crazy cold in the New England winters, go from that to a professionally paid speaker that gets paid $20,000 a speaking event, when there are thousands of other speakers that also are trying to get those jobs? So how do you become good enough to get them and get those jobs? Well, you've got to shorten your learning curve. You've got to become so good at that you can't help but to get noticed. You got to become that good at it. So what are the strategies, the methods, the techniques, the hacks, the ways that you can do that? And it's best illustrated in a story by a teacher who, which you may have heard of this story before. And if you have, it's still worth hearing it again. And it's a short story. It takes a second. Is the teacher who was teaching a pottery class. And he did an experiment one semester. And he had one class that had to produce the most, you got graded by how many pots that you made. So you come to class, you make another pot or 2 or 3 per class. And the more pots you made in class, the better your grade would be. The more you tried, the better your grade would be. The other class, he told them that you have to just make one pot. That's all you have to make, just one pot, but you get graded. 100% of your grade is on this one pot. So you got to try to make the best, most perfect pot you possibly can. So the class that was graded on the most perfect pot, the one pot, they labored and did research and found out all those things. They spent so much time in planning, but not nearly as much time in doing as compared to the class that got paid, that got graded on, well, I guess you get paid in a way. You get paid with your grade. That's that form of payment in college and school. And so they got graded on how many they did in class. So the students would come to class, they're excited, they would do one, and if it was a mess up, they'd crush it, they'd start all over, they'd create another one, and they'd create 1, 2, 3, or 4 pots in a class. The class that did the one perfect pottery did much worse than the class that was graded by quantity, because the more they tried, the more expertise, the more feedback, the more data, the more things they learned what worked and what didn't work. And at the end, their pots that they made on the last class were far superior to the class that only had to make the one pot. So step 1 to becoming really, really good at anything that you want to become good at is, how do you get the repetitions in? How do you go to the gym? A weightlifter, a big bodybuilder, huge muscles. These guys, you may or may not like what these guys look like, but the biggest guys that win Mr. Olympia and these other competitions, they go in and they almost always have the most reps. Almost always. That's the guy who wins, is the guy who has put in the most time, most reps, the best diet, eating, fine-tuning his diet and the strategies and all these things. The guy that does it the most. It's not the guy that goes to the gym once in a while. It's the guy who goes in and commits, fully obsessed with winning. And how do you get many more reps in? You do it more times. When I was not a speaker and I was going to become a speaker, I joined Toastmasters, which is a speaking club. You go there one night a week, you go up, you give an impromptu speech, and you also give a prepared speech, and that's how you become better over time. And a lot of corporations, a lot of people who work for corporations go to Toastmasters so they become better, so they can get promotions, and so they can learn how to present in front of their peers, in front of their staff, the co-workers, and become better at that, because presentation skills are required in some corporations. And so they'll join a Toastmasters group. Well, so did I. Except I didn't join 1, I joined 2, then 3, then 4, then 5 Toastmaster groups. So almost every night of the week, I was getting another opportunity to speak. Then I was volunteering for every opportunity I could to speak. So whether it was an MC or anything that they needed somebody to speak for, I was going to speak for them. And I spoke for free for hundreds of speeches just so I can get my time in. I entered competitions and I did everything I could, any opportunity to speak, I volunteered for, free, unpaid. I had to become good at it. One time, I get invited to be an MC of this fundraiser in New York City. It's in New York City. It's a musical thing. There's band after band after band. They're playing their music and they're raising money for some local organization. And so I was asked to MC it because people knew that's kind of what I was doing at that time. And so being an MC at a fundraiser is a very specific skill that I did not have at that time, but I did my best at that moment. And in between the sets of the bands they were playing, and I would do my little thing and I would talk and I would motivate them and I would tell them stories about why you need to feel generous with your money and donate to this organization, which everybody was there for that reason. So it's not like it was a surprise. But anyway, my friend, great big tall guy, barely knew him at that moment. We became good friends since, barely knew him, but he's a musician on the side, never really got all that far in music singing, but he knew a lot of people. And so I'm listening to this band and they're playing Journey songs. And I love Journey. I grew up with Journey. And, I played it in my Camaro back in the day. And that was one of my favorite groups. And so I listened to Journey over and over and over. In fact, I still have that CDs from when I would play it in my Camaro. And so I'm listening to this band and I go to my friend. I was like, man, these guys are good. They sound just like the real band. And he looks at me kind of condescending and he starts to laugh. I'm like, you idiot. I'm like, what? It's like, you idiot. That is Journey. Now, I didn't recognize them because one, they're older now because this was long after they were in their prime, but they were still on the circuit doing their things. But he had a personal connection with these guys. And so they were playing for him as a favor. So sometimes it's all about who you know, not what you know or how much money you have. But he knew Journey, so they came and did this thing. So I got a photo with the lead singer and the band, and it's one of my prized possessions because I grew up with Journey. I love their songs. But the point is that along the way, you've got to take every single opportunity. And sometimes along the way, you're going to have these fun experiences. So you're going to get to meet the band Journey in some tiny little event. And so I got to have a beer with the guys. And then another event, I got to throw out the first pitch in baseball because I was invited to it because of my places I was going and things like that. So when you do something and you do it often enough, you'll also get extra benefits and opportunities. But becoming good at something is a matter of how many reps can you put in. And that's the most important thing you can do to become better at something, is get the reps while trying to get better each time. You can't just put the reps in and not try to get better. Put the reps in and try to get better. Every opportunity you get to do something, do it. So for example, I moved to South America and I lived down there. I didn't speak almost any Spanish, barely any Spanglish. And so I'm down there and I think I could speak Spanish because I know a couple of phrases and that's it. But I quickly learned that I know zero Spanish. Absolutely zero. So I had to learn Spanish. So how did I learn Spanish? I learned how to speak Spanish well enough in 1 month. It took me about 4 or 5 weeks to learn Spanish, to go from zero to basic conversation in 1 month. And how did I do it? 2 hours of private lessons every day, weekday, Monday through Friday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2-hour sessions of Spanish classes. And I also practiced. I studied for 2 hours a day as well. My brain was so tired because I was putting in the reps that I would need to take a nap every day because my brain was just like literally it hurt. It was overloading from putting so much mental stress on it like I had never done in my entire life. And then because I was so uncomfortable speaking Spanish because my accent was bad and I barely knew the words, I would take a taxi. I love to walk to everything when I'm in a city. I would walk to everything. But in this moment, I would take a taxi because every taxi I got in spoke no Spanish at the first day, but I would say my name in Spanish. I would say, how are you? Like I learned the super basic things. And then the next day I would learn one more phrase or something. And I would practice with the taxi driver. So every time I'm in the taxi driver, person after person after person, I'm just practicing the tiny little bit that I knew. And I knew almost nothing. So these guys are like making fun of me and stuff. And they're trying hard. Such nice, wonderful people. They're trying so hard, but like I knew nothing. So like they're literally laughing at me. I'm laughing at myself because I know nothing. And so, but after 1 week goes by. Now I'm able to say a couple of things in the taxi cab. 2 weeks go by. Now I'm able to say actually a fairly decent amount. By 3 weeks, by 4 weeks, by 5th weeks, I'm speaking reasonably conversational. I'm still misunderstanding. I'm still mispronouncing. I'm still doing everything really, really, really bad. But I went from zero to being able to get by in another language in another country in just 4 or 5 weeks. And then I've become better from that. And now I'm nearly fluent. But I'm still improving at this point because I want to get to the point that I can speak in Spanish as well as I can in English. And I'm not there yet. So I'm still improving. I'm trying to get my reps in as much as I can. And that is one of the reasons that I moved to South America. I've also lived in Mexico. I've also lived in Costa Rica. I've also lived in Asia, and I've been to some other places as well. And now I want to start learning Portuguese because I want to spend time in Brazil and I want to spend time in Portugal. And then I want to learn Italian because I want to live in Italy as well, which is where part of my family's from. But the point of that is that you have to put in the reps in as short of a period as a time. Be the pottery class that got graded on how many pottery things they could make in that semester rather than trying to be perfect the first time. Because if you try to be perfect, you'll never take the action. And the more action you take, the more comfortable you get, the more fearless you get. And you get fearless by doing it all the time. I got fearless speaking in Spanish because I spoke to the cab drivers every day. I never saw most of those cab drivers or taxi drivers ever again. Although I lived there long enough that I took enough taxis that I started meeting the guys, and I saw them when I was first there, and then I saw them like a year or two later, and now I'm speaking fairly fluently, and they're like, oh my God, I remember when you first got here, like you were terrible. You couldn't speak anything. I didn't understand a freaking word you were saying. I just kept smiling at you. And so you become better by putting in the reps with the intention to improve. But how do you get better? Like, how do you reach a higher level? Well, that's where you got to not only put the reps in, but you got to put the reps in with the intentionality. the specific intentionality, not just to improve, but to be the best. And that's really what it takes. It's the two rules of the repetitions and the intentionality to become the best. How do I become one of the best speakers in the entire world so that I get paid the big money? How do I get $5, $10, $15, $20,000 or more at a corporate speaking event for an hour talk? How do I get to that level? So I had to do it with the intentionality. I hired coaches. I practiced. I took every opportunity. I put in my dues. I paid my rent to be able to get there. But then I realized something. Is that once you're at that level, you've got to pay your rent every single day. If I don't speak Spanish for a week or two, I lose some of that skill. I used to build houses, as I told you in the beginning of the video. So when I was up on the roof and I'm running around, I'm jumping from rafter to rafter, the individual 2x, and I'm running around the roof 30, 40 feet up in the air, and I'm not thinking anything of it because I had the repetitions in it, and my body had the balance and understanding and connection with the way the house is framed and built, that I could just run across those things and not even think twice and be fearless for the ground, 20, 30, 40 feet up in the air. I was up on my roof a weekend or two ago, and I'm scared to death because I haven't been up on a roof in years. And so I go up there and like my legs are shaking because I haven't been putting in the repetition. I lost it. And so that's why you put the repetition in. But then how do you become so good is you got to have the intentionality so that you are the best. What are the tiny nuances that goes from being conversational in a language to fluency in a language? And it's those small things. It's the nuances. How do you become a good speaker that might be getting paid a few $100 or maybe a few thousand to a guy that's top of that makes the most money? And that's the intentionality, learning those nuances and becoming great. So put in the repetitions, focus on the nuances, to the tiny nuances that make you the best. And that's how you become good at anything, regardless of your experience, regardless of how much you've done it or not done it or failed over and over and over. If you stick to this, you will succeed better than anyone and you will become extraordinary. Whether that's running a marathon after marathon, becoming paid $20,000 a speech, building a company, becoming a millionaire, losing weight, whatever it is. I've got another opportunity for you. I want to invite you into my Unstoppable Morning. If you master your morning, you'll master your day and you'll succeed even more. It's a free group you can join where you'll get stuff from me that is not available on YouTube. It's only available in that group. So go to unstoppablemorning.com, or the link is below in the description, unstoppablemorning.com. I look forward to seeing there, where I teach you the mindset, the strategies, how to succeed, and how to create a life working no more than 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. Master your morning, master your day, master your life.